If there's one thing that's certain about vinyl record collecting, it ain't a cheap hobby. But what I'm going to do today, just for fun, is I'm going to take a look at my most expensive records according to Discogs. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to Northern Revolutions. I'm Rob. Welcome back if you're returning. Welcome if you're new. As I mentioned off the top, we're going to take a look at my most expensive records according to Discogs. I did this exercise, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and I wanted to see if it had changed very much in those last 2 years. Not that I hold a lot of stock in the perceived value that Discogs assigns to things. Let me be clear. Discogs is a great resource. I love it. It's great for cataloging my collection. It's a great marketplace to try and find stuff. But a lot of people get a little too hung up on Discogs says it's worth a certain amount. It's not. It's only worth what someone is going to pay for it. And the values listed on Discogs are simply a reflection of the Discogs sales history. Doesn't really necessarily mean that's exactly what something is worth, but it's a fun barometer nonetheless, just to take a look at, what in theory the most expensive albums in my collection are. I'm not selling any of them. I don't really care that they're worth anything. I don't collect any records because it might be worth something. Every record I own is because I love the music, I love the artist, and I listen to it. So with that in mind, let's take a look at what Discogs says are my 10 most expensive records. Okay, starting off at number 10 is Aerosmith's Honkin' on Bobo from 2004. According to Discogs, the median historical selling price in the Discogs marketplace for this album is $199 Canadian. Did I pay that? Absolutely not. I actually really like this album. This is their blues album. Much maligned, everybody hates it. I really like it. I saw them on this tour at Cops Coliseum in Hamilton, Ontario. Loved it. My wife saw them on this tour as well. We hadn't met yet. We actually met a month later, but funny that we were both at that same show. Yeah, so it wasn't too long after this, maybe a year or two after this, that I managed to find a copy of this on eBay, in the early days of eBay for sure. And I think I probably paid maybe $60 at the time, which I thought was a lot for a record. In retrospect, it's not. So I have never ever seen another copy of this for sale in the wild at a show, at a record store, whatever. So yeah, $199 Canadian for Aerosmith's Honkin' on Bobo is my number 10. Number 9 is a band that I fell in love with and was heartbroken when they broke up. Grace Potter and the Nocturnals. Man, this band was lightning in a bottle. I just loved this band. Not a big fan of Grace Potter solo, but I could probably make a whole other video on that. This is their self-titled album that came out in 2011. I think this was, their major label debut on Hollywood Records. They had several albums previous to this, but this was kind of like the big time for them. I think Ooh La La, Paris Ooh La La was a radio hit in the US, not so much in Canada. I saw them on the subsequent tour, actually, for The Lion, the Beast, the Beat. But I bought this when it came out on her website. I actually have 2 copies of this because the one that I have from her website has a small blemish on one of the tracks and it does skip one time. So I found a second copy on eBay. So I can't bear to part with the one that has a blemish, but so I have 2 of these. Anyway, fantastic album. And I would suggest if you want to listen to Grace Potter and the Nocturnals, they're kind of like a 70s flavored blues rock band. I would suggest this is probably the album to start with. According to Discogs, this has a median selling price of $201.27 Canadian. Number 8 was actually my gateway album into Wilco. This is Billy Bragg and Wilco's Mermaid Avenue. This was pressed on vinyl, I think, 2013, but was recorded in the early 90s. It was the first of 3 collaborations between Wilco and Billy Bragg, where they took Woody Guthrie lyrics and put them to music. This was the first one. These Mermaid Avenue Volume 2 and 3 would follow. I don't remember why I got into this album. I love the song California Stars, and maybe that's where it started. My good friend Bob, he actually plays on a couple songs in this album before he left Wilco and actually joined Billy Bragg's band for a year after this. But love this album. Probably my favorite of all of the Wilco albums that I own, even though it's not just Wilco. According to Discogs, median selling price, $203.99 Canadian. I picked this up when it first came out, so I was fortunate because I've only ever seen it maybe once or twice since then at a pretty hefty price. Number 7 on my list is my favorite album of all time, and one of the 17 different versions I have of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. This is the Mobile Fidelity original master recording. This is the 1983 version. According to Discogs, has a median selling price of $246.97 Canadian. I certainly didn't pay anywhere near that. I don't even remember when I got this, to be quite honest. I probably have had it for, 15 years, maybe more. Don't remember when I got it. I know I've had it forever. Don't listen to it a lot. Truthfully, my Sgt. Pepper of choice is the mono remaster or the original UK first press. But because I love this album and I have so many different versions of Sgt. Pepper, here it is. Number 6, a second appearance by the Beatles. Let It Be Naked. I love Let It Be Naked. My preferred version of Let It Be, hands down. I think it was a real miss that this wasn't included in the Super Deluxe Let It Be box set, because there are a lot of people that don't have this. A lot of people wish they did. It really should have been included. But nevertheless, I bought this the day that it came out. Back in, when did this come out? 2003. I remember that I was at HMV in Waterloo, Ontario. And I said, I got to go in because this is coming out. And they had it on vinyl, so I grabbed it. And boy, am I thankful that I did, because of all the, sort of modern Beatles releases, this is the most expensive one. According to Discogs, the median selling price on this, $246.49 Canadian. Number 5 on my most expensive records list, according to Discogs, is an album that means nothing to anyone outside of Canada. So it's got some regional value, but it has some regional value because this band is pretty significant here. Blue Rodeo. 2005's Are You Ready? Not one of my favorites. It's probably the most acoustic of all their albums. Yeah, not a lot to say about it. It's kind of a so-so album. Was released on vinyl, very, 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 very limited. I don't think it ever went to stores. I think they only sold it at shows. That's where I bought this. My wife has a copy as well. I also have another copy that is autographed by the entire band. It's framed hanging on my wall. So considering this is in my top 10 and there's 3 of these in my house, I consider myself pretty fortunate. Again, if you're outside of Canada, you probably don't give a rat's arse about this, but pretty significant Canadian band. So according to Discogs, historical median selling price of $272 Canadian. Probably not going to get repressed anytime soon. I actually have had a conversation with someone in the band and the band's management about whether the rest of the catalog was ever going to get pressed/repressed, and the answer is no. At the present time, Warner Music Canada, who has the decision rights whether this happens or not, has no interest in pressing the rest of their catalog, which is interesting. Number 4 on my list, Taylor Swift. This is a 12-inch picture disc. It was the live Billboard Music Awards rehearsal recording of the song Me, which is when she put out the album Lover. She performed it on the show. I guess they recorded the rehearsal and pressed it on a picture disc and was for sale a short time later on her website for a very limited time. As a Swiftie, I bought it. Listen, I love Taylor Swift, don't get me wrong, but her album prices are grossly inflated. I mean, there's a lot of Swifties, I don't know where they're getting their money from, paying some of these crazy prices, like her record store day colored vinyl ones are like thousands of dollars. Insane. I'm not complaining. I mean, I bought this off her website for 40 bucks, and it has a median selling price of $279.16 Canadian. Crazy. Number 3 on my list, again, Aerosmith, an album no one gives a shit about. Just Push Play from 2001. This is the one that has the song Jaded, which was probably one of their last radio hits, maybe the last radio hit. That album, very, very few people like. I think it's okay. It's, whatever. But being kind of a completist, I had to buy this. And around the same time that I tracked down that Honkin' on Bobo that I showed earlier, I grabbed this off eBay. So, mid 2000s probably. And again, I think I probably paid 60 or 80 bucks for it, which again, at the time I was like, holy crap, 80 bucks for a record. That's insane. Now Discogs says historical selling price, $316.19 Canadian. Number 2 on my list. You all know this is going to appear somewhere near the top. My Beatles Butcher cover. So I don't need to tell the Beatles Butcher cover story. Everybody knows about it. This is a third state mono from Los Angeles. I picked it up on eBay a dozen years ago, maybe. I think I paid about $100. Now, Discogs has a median selling price of $455 Canadian. I take that with a grain of salt because obviously condition was a huge part in what you get for it. Everything that I've shown before is in near mint, and that's being pretty strict on my grading. Most of these are absolutely flawless shape. This is in pretty shitty shape. I mean, there's a seam split. It's a bad peel. So is this worth 450 bucks? I don't know. I mean, that really depends. Depends who's looking. They're not the easiest thing in the world to come by. Maybe easier now than they were 10 or 15 years ago, given the prevalence of online record selling and buying. But you don't see these every day. I mean, in real life, I've only ever seen 2, this one, and I've seen a second state mono. So is it worth 450 bucks? I don't know. You be the judge. And number 1, the most expensive record in my collection. Drum roll, please. Taylor Swift, Folklore, the Long Pond Studio Sessions. I wouldn't own this if it wasn't for my very good friend, John, over at Music Talk with John, who offered to pick this up for me on Record Store Day last year because he's at Record Store Day. I was too, but my local didn't have this, which is not a surprise. So I was kind of hoping one of my YouTube buddies would be able to get one, and several of them were texting me that morning. Did you get it? No. John was the first one that said, it's here if you want it. And I said, absolutely. John shipped it to me. I paid him for it, obviously, and I paid the shipping. So thank you, John. I don't really care that this is worth a ton. I listen to this, and I love this. I'm a Swiftie. We know this, right? I've talked about this. I really like Folklore. I love this because Folklore, the studio album, everyone recorded their parts remotely in their own studios. It was assembled. This is all the musicians together in one studio recording the album live off the floor. So it has a much more organic feel to it. I think it's a great album to begin with. This just takes it up another notch. I don't listen to the regular Folklore. I only listen to this. I was blown away when they finally put it out on vinyl, and I'm eternally thankful to John for bringing this up for me. Thank you, sir. No, you can't have it back now that it's worth a fortune. According to Discogs, this has a median selling price of $497 Canadian. Again, I think that's kind of somewhat artificially inflated because the Swifties, I don't mean this as a derogatory way, because I am a Swiftie, but the hardcore Swifties, I mean, it almost seems like money's no object when it comes to some of these things. So I think this is crazy. And I mean, Taylor's at the height of her fame or whatever. I'm not saying that that'll decrease, but I mean, she's at the height of the Eras Tour and all this other stuff. I mean, she's at the top of her game. So I think her stuff's demanding a premium at this point in time, Will it level off eventually? Maybe, who knows? But for now, this is the most expensive record in my collection. There you go, folks. There is, according to Discogs, the 10 most expensive records in my collection. Take that with a grain of salt. I mean, Discogs should be used as a guide. It is not the gospel in terms of this is what it is worth. It's not. That's just what the people on Discogs marketplace have paid. So it's only worth what someone will pay for it. So hope you found that interesting. I simply did it just for fun because I was curious to see if the perceived value of my expensive records had changed. I don't really care what they're worth. I play every one of these except my Butcher cover. So it was just a fun exercise more than anything else. So hope you enjoyed that. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Drop me a note. Let me know what the most expensive record in your collection is. I'd be curious to find out. That's everything from me today, everybody. Catch you on the flip side.